Okay, for those of you who have not already watched this how to use the field type, so the file field type to upload a file in JCB, if you haven't watched this, then I would suggest that you first come and watch this tutorial, because there's a lot of things that I explain in here which I'm not going to go into that depth again, otherwise it's going to be 2 hours. But in this tutorial I'm going to sort of talk about a drag and drop automated crop functionality, which could also be used instead of this implementation. So this implementation would be I say much more limited. You could do a crop with this one as well, but we haven't actually demonstrated that. We're going to demonstrate it now in this tutorial. And the library I'm going to use, before I go on, let me just I'll actually add a link to this video underneath the one that you're watching. Okay, so the other thing you need to know about is UIKit. Now, of course, I suppose by now you're very aware of UIKit. UIKit has a very nice file uploading front end, which I have used quite often. So I am going to demonstrate using UIKit's upload, but if you know anything about JavaScript and that kind of stuff, it wouldn't be hard to plug in bootstraps or any other library which you actually want to use. JCB can be scaled to be using other libraries. You just go to libraries and set up the new library, and then in your include the files in your admin view, and there you go. So at this point I'm just going to use JCB, UIKit. Now I'm going to use the older version 2 UIKit in my presentation, and that's simply because that's the one I've already got going in some of my projects. I'm a little lazy or a little reluctant to actually embrace the later release because of its lack of compatibility, backward compatibility, which is to me like not good. Okay, anyway, let me not rant about that. So where you want to go, you would like to go to get UIKit version 2, and actually to components. This is where you would like to actually go. Then you would see, you'll see there's a upload at the very bottom that actually explains to you how to use this this library. This is the JavaScript that we'll be using. So it's got a nice progress bar and everything. And this is the HTML that we'll be using, and it's got a nice, drag and drop area and selecting area, so you can give some information here to the user as well as have them drop the file right there, and it works very well. I've used it for a number of years now. It's got some events here, and it's very similar to version 3. So if you wanted to see version 3's option, you'd simply click on version 3, documentation, and scroll somewhere to the bottom. It says download, and here it is, select. There's the markup for the select, and then the drag and drop. There's the markup for the drag and drop, so you'd use this and then this JavaScript. So it's looked very much the same. There's a few changes, of course, a little bit changes in those, but for the most part it's generally the same kind of approach. So you would naturally just be able to plug in this if instead you want to use UIKit 3 or any other library. You're going to see me making, for example, this dynamic, and the URL is going to be dynamic, and whether it's going to be allowing multiple or only one, all those kind of let me see, I don't think the previous one had the multiple option, but this one also has allowed, what type of image or file do you want to permit to be uploaded, and the action is where the URL is, right? And yeah, so you'll see me actually make some of this dynamic with the script that I'm using. And of course here we are talking Ajax, and so you're able to upload the file without saving the item where this area is available, and you simply can use a note to actually add this script to your page. So that's what I usually do. I use a note and just add this. Somebody drops something here, it's going to post to the server, and so if the item has an ID, I pass the ID so that it gets stored in the database immediately. So even if you save or don't save, the file actually gets added to that item. And if it's a new item, which means no ID, we actually add a hidden field to the form. So we return the actual value that must go to the database, and we put it in that hidden field so that when you then do save the item, it actually does store it in the correct place. So that's sort of the approach. I'm going to demonstrate that to you step by step with an existing component which I already got out there and it's using, and it is actually available in JCB. So you'll see there's this new import JCB packages. You could either click on this, or you can go to Joomla components and click on import components. It's the same, it's really the same thing. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard and click on import JCB packages. There has been a release fix. I think there's been the previous release, if you clicked on import JCB packages, it actually didn't, it didn't give you this. It didn't give you this package tab here. It gave you only those. In fact, it's a little broken. So best then go to Joomla components and ensure to click on import components, then to be sure that it gives you this VDM packages tab. This VDM packages tab is a new extension on the import of components. It is actually the only part of the import of the components that already does actual validation on the package integrity. So for each of these packages that are here, we actually do have a validation. So giving you an example, Hello World is not already, if we come here we'll see Hello World isn't here. So if I was to now select Hello World and click get package, it actually fetches it from GitHub, and it has a method of actually getting a hash, a checksum of the package. Now you can make sure that it tells you here that the validation, so now at this point the package is on your server. Now you can click cancel and that will delete the package from your server, but this here tells you that the validation has passed. So what is the actual package that we are distributing is the one you've now got, and you can verify that by click on this link. So if you click on this link, it should open a simple text string. Okay, it's taking a moment, my network here. Okay, and this text string should be the same as the one you see here, and that is sort of just a heads up. It's an area which we started adding some checksum validation, and yeah, it's not military grade, but it's fair enough. I think anyone trying to now stand in the middle of this is gonna have quite crazy gymnastics to take care of. Okay, so at this point the package which being imported is displayed here, and you just click quiet. Means that you don't see all of the things it's doing. I would suggest you say no, you want to see everything. Force update means that if it finds a similar field type or a similar field or a similar admin view or anything that is similar, and the creation date is younger in your system, it actually overrides it because you forced it. If it finds it and the actual current date in your system is older, so that the one you're importing is younger, it'll automatically update it with the latest, newest version. This is how it works, and that's why we're telling you to make backups, because Well, the other advantage is if you get a field type that was overwritten and it's not really what you expected, you actually got history. You could go back one step. Usually you would. Okay, so I'm going to say yes, force that, and then continue. And that simply adds a whole list of what it's done, what it's imported, and it also moved an image. It shows you that, and it tells you done. Okay, so there we go. Hello World is now in this system. Now we are going to look at something completely different, and it is actually the document manager. Is a paid package which we distribute. You can obviously buy this package from us. It actually does have all this functionality that I'm going to demonstrate now in it, and so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to add a key here and click continue, and then basically install this component in JCB, and then from there we'll start demonstrating its functionality. Okay, so we've got Document Manager now installed here. Let me quickly show you how it looks in action. So I'm going to install it to this component Joomla website and demonstrate it. Okay, now we have it here, Component Manager, Document Manager, and we can create a document quite easily by clicking New Document, and you'll see that there is some allowed image formats are not set in the global settings. Please notify your system administrator. So you can't at this point upload actually anything, neither images, neither documents, neither any media. So we'll go out of this, and in the options of the component there is actually a media tab that says what type of documents you want to allow. So for our purpose I'm just going to say PDF for now. With the media I'm just going to say MP3, and with the images just JPEG. Now with the images, I know in this component I'm only having one image, and I want it to be a specific dimension. So I'm going to say I want the width to be 200 and the height to be 300. Let's say make it 350. So it's almost like a book A4 kind of dimensions. And so that's going to be used to crop my image. I'm using a library which I'll show you in a moment, which gets these values to decide upon how to actually go ahead and crop the image if it's an image. Obviously if it's any of these it doesn't do anything. Only if it's an image does it actually use the crop mechanism, and it does it via an Ajax. Okay, so we've done that. Save and close. If we now again click on New Documents, we see this drag and drop area like we looked here at GitHub, on UIKit. We see this thing in action really. So we see it says that you upload your image, and it tells you that this is what the dimensions should be, and if not, the doc will be cropped to this size. So that means if it's not this dimension, it will be cropped to that, either enlarged or downsized. By dropping the file here or selecting a file from your computer, and formats allowed JPEG. So it tells you what formats are allowed. This is all done basically dynamically through the script that I'll show you in a moment. Then the same goes here with the document. It tells you PDF is allowed, and with the media it tells you MP3. Now with the image I'm only allowing one image, whereas with the documents I'm allowing multiple documents and multiple media for one document. How this displays and works on the front end, it works lovely, no problems. I'm not going to demonstrate that. That's not what this is all about. I'm just going to demonstrate this functionality of uploading a file. And you'll need to, if you use this in your own component, you'll need to extend that and use it and make it, functional as it should be in your component. Okay, so now let's go and look at the code. The area which we need to focus on first is basically the documents area, of course. We'll have to look at some of these fields that's attached here. some of its JavaScript, and the Ajax area, which is really where everything's happening. As you'll see, I'm using custom code placeholders almost everywhere because I'm reusing a lot of the scripts everywhere in other components, and I've therefore adapted it so that it could be used multiple places. So you'll see here also I've got upload file, remove file, functions, and it's got target and type and field file name, target, flush, type. It's got values. All of these values play a role within the behavior that we will eventually have, or did be demonstrated on the page. Well, I didn't demonstrate it, I just showed you how it is. We'll actually demonstrate it still. You also see here I've got this set vast dev mod, which is basically a function that generates for us some variables, which in this case is called VDM, which gets placed in a variable called vast dev mod. This information is what is used to identify the view from which the query is made. This is a long string which really is related to the cache at that stage of the view ID and name. This is how I pass the view name and ID, so I do not really pass it via the Ajax query. I actually have it in session memory, and only if these keys validate does it actually work. Sort of another layer and another layer. There's many layers in this to try and make this secure. Then this admin kit 2 is where I am actually loading all the UIKit files. So I am manually adding it to the admin view. The admin backend doesn't actually work as the site views, where we could select a library and it dynamically adds it to the view on compilation. You have to manually add it to the view, and you'll do it basically in the custom script of the document. Now I can show you some of these snippets, and then we can take it further. There's obviously in the custom buttons area, this is the get VDM for the, which I've explained. Again, we have some custom script here, and that's basically all that we have there. And then in the JavaScript area, we again have set file, which is a part of the script that we'll have to look at. And you see I'm using set file here, here, and here because we have an image, we have documents, and we have media, and they're all using the set file method, which is a JavaScript function, which is declared in this custom script. And here at the bottom in the footer, we've got what is known as Gatesfile snippet, which again deals with actually some of the automated integration of the file when dragged and dropped, and that it actually immediately displays on the page. This takes care of that. Okay, so we'll go and look at those individual concepts. We're also going to see, like I said previously, some notes. So here's the main media uploader node, there's the main document uploader node, and there's the document image uploader node. And so this is where I've added the HTML for the drag and drop that you see in the admin view. Then we have for each of those correspondingly a hidden value for the document image key, the main documents key, and the main media key. All of these are hidden fields, which basically is where we store these values, and that's really, we'll look at some of that as well. Okay, so let's go and see the code that is used. Maybe let's start in the interface, right? So let's first look at one of these uploading concepts, but since I know what's happening there, I am already aware that the actual code is not there. So it's actually also custom placeholder snippet. So before we actually dive in, let me anyway open the custom code area, then go back into documents, so that when we see the code snippet, we can actually go and look at the code snippet. So let's use this documents uploader node and open that. So here we have the document uploader node. Basically we have a div all the way down there which has an ID, and then it has the class for the placeholder, some icons, and you'll see that I again have here upload your documents there. Here I've got a span tag that says main documents formats. So it's basically gonna be the place we load the formats with JavaScript, and then select the file from your computer. So this is all basically it's this snippet just with a little bit of extra flavor. Yeah, that's really all we're looking at here. And then obviously there are some conventions like main documents uploader, that again here upload drop main documents. There are some conventions which, if we go over the code eventually, you'll see that those conventions is what really makes this reusable. Then in the scripts area, I added a JavaScript to the view footer, and the JavaScript I'm using is this UIKit file uploader custom code. So let's look at that then first. We can just search for it. There it is. We can open that. So this is the code that gets added. So it's got a little bit of PHP here, and it is saying, okay, great, argument 0 formats. So we are asking, we're getting the global parameters of the formats we set, which remember I showed you we set it in the global settings. So here we are saying document is the first parameter we're passing. So we are basically saying document formats here. So we're getting the document formats. And then here we have arc2 and arc1 progress bar. So if you think about the ID here, it says progress bar. The second, which is the third argument, is main. Documents is the second argument. Sorry, the first argument, because we're counting from 0. So it's actually saying main documents. So if you look back at our thing here, it says main documents formats. So this is all part of main documents. It is the way we identify the progress bar. So progress bar, let's see, where is the progress bar? Here it is, progress bar main documents. So it's an ID, there's only one of them on the page, so it's targeting it here, saying okay, that's the progress bar we're going to use. And then it's having some settings. The settings, obviously the action, we're using JRouter. Now this JRouter is a little JavaScript trick that I wrote, because oftentimes you have this site view or other admin view, you have it in the back end and you have it in the front end. And so this just takes care of whether it's a back end or front end call, so that it actually executes correctly. Now that is your component name. The argument 1 again would be the second argument, which is in our case documents. So basically there it says documents, the type, And then the third argument, which is showing as the second one, is main. So it's passing the target as main. Raw is true. It has the token. And there's our key, which is being used to identify the view. Okay, so it's making a query on this area here, and it's set dynamically. Then over here, we know that the formats must be added to this area with pipe between it. So like you remember here, it adds the formats with a pipe. So we're just basically exploding the array we got here from the global parameters for documents, and it displays it in here. Then again, we have other this actual snippet excuse me, I will add under this name on a GitHub gist, so you could actually copy paste it from there and adapt it for your purpose. Again, here we're also imploding the formats because we want to display it. We want to show the user the formats, and so we have here second argument, the third argument and the second argument formats, which would be documents and main. So if we look at our div, we see there the formats as documents and main format. So it's targeting this span tag and basically adding it in there. Okay, so that is adding the formats HTML to this ID. Then if we've detected up here that you didn't have any formats set, we're basically gonna update the whole div, which is the upload drop area, with allowed formats are not set in the global settings, please notify system administrator. So that's the final part of our JavaScript. So we have JavaScript mixed in with HTML, taking care of some of the display behavior on that page. Okay, so that is the reusable snippet. So I'm reusing this same snippet file uploader for various areas. So if we were to close out here and I was then to actually open the media node, you'll see that it's really just using the same snippet. So if I go to script, it's the same snippet. I'm just changing the variables I'm passing. Here is saying media, media, main, whereas the other one was saying document, documents, plural, and main. This one is saying media, media, main. And then the same goes with the image. With the image, we also have that kind of behavior. Same UIKit image uploader. Oh, this one is not using the file uploader, it's using the image uploader, which is a little different. There is an image uploader and there's images uploader in my custom snippets. I'll show you why they are different. One allows one image and the other one allows more. The file one allows one, more than one. This one only allows one. So it has a little bit of a different flavor and behavior. And yes, I will also place this out there on Gits for you to have a look at. Always remember these arguments are behaving the similar way as an array, which means that the first argument will always be 0, the second argument 1, and so forth. So I'm basically using arguments in this snippet. Everywhere where I declare it, I am actually passing the 3 arguments that is required. I use this plus there to pass it. And the div obviously looks very similar, except that it now would say images, and images, you see there, it's using different placeholders, so you need to update those accordingly as it's needed. So that's just to set up the field. Set up the field, you need to have that JavaScript in place and you need to have that div sort of in place. Regarding the hidden, if I was to take one of the hidden fields, let's say the document's hidden field, you'll see there are some naming conventions here that is quite you need to follow. So it says main documents, it doesn't just say documents. And you'll see when we actually add the value back to the page, we are able to target it based on these naming conventions. So yeah, that's quite important. And then for some security, which is really just a little extra layer, it's like one guy said, you know, it's not that we can really stop them, we can just make it very hard. So there are different encryption options. This medium encryption local file key is actually better than the basic. The basic stores the key in the database, which in that case means that if somebody sweeps your database, they actually do have the key. But it could happen that they were able to get hold of your database but not actually all of your files, especially those that are behind the public repository. So the medium encryption option can actually generate a file behind the public folder, which therefore is not publicly accessible, and that makes it just that little bit more difficult to actually get a key to open the value. And the reason is, let's say your documents are not available to every group on your system, maybe just some groups can access that document, then this is another layer of security that's already by default built into the field behavior. Okay, so that is really just looking at the fields. Now the admin view documents have some custom script in it as well. So we got here the set file, which really is the JavaScript that fires when it gets the request back from the Ajax call. You'll see, let me show you, if we go back here, here on autocomplete, or all complete, sorry, there's a function, and then at some point when everything is satisfied, it has your set file key, and it passes a bunch of variables to it. Now this is really the function that we're going to have to look at. So let's use that set file.js and then search it here. So here we go. So we'll see here there is a set file key function in the document, and that's what's being, so in your Ajax, which you're using UIKit's function here, it has an autocomplete. So even if you look here, sorry, not autocomplete, all complete, which is a place where when you know the server has told you it's done, everything is good, then you can do some house cleaning in the browser, and that's really what we're doing. We're checking, if it's done. We take away the progress bar. If it has an error, we actually pop out the error as an alert. If it's successful, because we decide what this response is going to be, so we decided to give a successful value in the array, then we fire the set file key, which is actually looking at our admin view. We're adding this custom code in here, and it is actually adding all this code that you see here is being added. It's quite a lot of code, but it's all being added to the admin view, and it can be used for different admin views if it's obviously dealing with either images, documents, or media. So I'm going to try and explain all this. It's almost end up teaching you some JavaScript, although I'm being accused of writing JavaScript like PHP. Yeah, sorry. Okay, point is, the JavaScript here actually does some checking and validating, and I'll put this as well. I'll just put it out there, and really when it discovers that everything is fine, the file actually was added, then it goes ahead. Here it's checking the length of the file name. See, if the file name length is not greater than 20, or if it's not an image or a document, then it must be removed. So the return values are here quite key to make sure that we have this remove file from server function in place. Remember, I showed you in the admin view that we've got these remove file tasks and methods. Well, this basically is going to, if I scroll down a bit here, here it is. It's basically querying that, see, remove file, and it's passing all the necessary variables to remove the correct file. Yeah, it's also checking that the person who is trying to remove the file is actually a logged in user. And on the file where in a moment we'll look at the actual PHP, which will again validate that that user actually has permission to remove the file. So there are all these checks and balances across the every step of this implementation. And as you by now might realize, this implementation is far more complicated than the one the normal file upload. That's simple. This really gets into the nitty-gritty of some of these things, because you want to give a real easy sort of behavior for your user, but that will mean that you need to do way more to sort of think for them and protect them so that they don't actually become vulnerable at any time. Okay, so once we're satisfied that the file is correct and it doesn't need to be removed, we actually trigger a few things which actually puts the file in the page. That's really what we want to eventually end up doing. This set file is what we are moving towards, because we want to make sure that the file now, after you've dragged and dropped it on the page, boom, it shows in the page once it's really on the server. And that's really what's being done here a little bit. It's doing a little bit of checking just to make sure we're all good, everything's fine. And we end up with what we now call file name, and it gets passed here. And now we are moving into set file. And the set file is going to take the target and it's going to determine what kind of target it is and get the format, get to this, get to that, so we can build the file name correctly. And now I've got some functions here which may be not what you need, but I mean, you look through this and you decide what to keep and what to throw out. But we end up building a notice which actually has your so and so have been set, and then it triggers the get file. The get file is the other function, which if you look at the admin view, let's go back here to the JavaScript, we've got here the set file, and here we've got the get file. Now the get file is again another layer of validation, and also just making sure that everything is really behaving as we would want and expect it to behave. So the rest of this snippet here is just a remove file and is JSON string. We also have a little snippet to check if it's a JSON string and if it's empty and all that. It's all part of just sanitizing and validating and making sure everything is the way we expect. Okay, so that's we'll now want to look at the Gatesfile.js, which has different implementation, and as you can see, it is in the footer, the view footer. So we have PHP in that area of the JavaScript. So it's this set, and this is the get file. Now in the get file, we have again a link that was echoed, which we are now going to use to actually load the file, to make it that it can be downloaded. Yeah, that's really the issue. if it's a document or if it's a media, we obviously don't want to display it, but we want to have you be able to download it. So we have different behaviors for image and images, as well as if you scroll down for documents and for media. So it has different behaviors. It continues building buttons and displays, and I'll pop this code also out there on the Gits, and you can look at it and see if you can make sense out of it. This thing here, the document link or the document button, is the potential idea about this. If we go to actually, let me close out here and go to the actual document manager, and then we can go back in there. In the document manager, when you create a document, you have here what we call description. So if you add a document, you can actually use those placeholders in the description, and it's the beginning of actually using these documents across the website and not just in the component. So we'll eventually write a little plugin, and if you actually use this placeholder which it generates, if you use that anywhere, the plugin will identify it and will load either a link or a button depending on which one you're using. This is the button, this is the link. That's really what it's doing. So you might say, I don't need placeholders, and you can just grab that part and take it out. Also then, wherever the var placeholder is being used, you need to remove, for example, over there, because we got a file box that we're building, and it's basically getting the placeholders, the download and the delete buttons. All of them get loaded into the file box, and if we are having more than one file, we are treating it differently than having just one file. And really, that is what we do here. Being the document is a little different behavior, but somewhat the same. And that is what actually then does the final stretch. It's like a relay race. One carries it this far, and then the other one takes it over and carries it a little further. And this one is at the very last end of the match, where it is now finally putting the image back into the page, and all of the nice little frills and bells and whistles happens here. And of course, this is where you can really spice it up with some JavaScript, and you can see I'm using UIKit to deal actually with most of the styling. Okay, so now you've seen the front end, as we would call it, of the behavior of our drag and drop. So you've seen how I set up the field. You've seen how when the Ajax has finished its request, it actually runs this set file key, and the set file key then triggers a whole bunch of things, which ends up adding the file to the page. Now let me demonstrate here in our little new document. Let me demonstrate some of these functions so you can see that which I've now explained exactly what it does. So here I've got a bunch of images. It's just generic open source kind of images. So I'm just going to grab one and dump it in here. And you didn't see that. Wait, let me scroll down. Let me get that image again. Put it down a little lower. Let me get another one. Let's use this house. And I'm going to drag it there. It highlights it, see? Then for a moment it has this little uploader. Because we are on local network, it's very fast, but usually you'll see ting 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 as it uploads. And then when it's done, it says your document image is set. So that was built with the JavaScript. And there is the document image on display. And there is now remove document image. I can click that and it'll tell me, are you sure you want to delete this document? I say yes, and boom, it's gone. Okay, so, and we're back at square one, as if we had nothing. And it doesn't only delete it from the page, it actually removes it from the server as well. So let's drag another one, just drag it there, drop, and it uploads. And there's our nicely cropped image. It obviously crops in the center of the image, because how does it know the house is on the side? We're not doing that kind of smart detection yet. We're just cropping the image in the most sensible way. Now with the uploading of a document, it's more or less the same. Let me just get a document. Okay, so we've got a document here, and you can drag and drop it in there, and again it uploads it, and with the upload it generates those links I told you, which you could copy and now put it in the description if you want, or you could test it. Now what is noteworthy here is that the name of the document doesn't actually get lost, while the place where documents are added is actually in the same folder. So you could add multiple documents to this document, and it'll just keep on stacking them, though they even have the same name. It will have, each one will be uniquely tagged to not be the same as the other, which means that on the server we are storing this document with a long hash sort of added onto the name, which is an extra layer of security, so people, if they could access the folder, they at least don't know what the name is anymore. Same with the image. If we were to actually inspect the image, you'll see that that image has got this huge name, doc image JPEG island JPEG. So it's no longer the same name as the one you uploaded. It actually changes it. It preserves the name, for example, in the documents option here, so that you giving to someone the document, they get what you expect. But we do actually adapt the names for security so that it can't be actually allocated on the server if for some reason it's not a good document. Okay, and so you could test it by clicking here, and it should then just bring it up and be available as a download. Now how the download works here with the document, I'm actually using a controller. So if we hovered over this link here, you'd see, okay, you can't see that. How can I show it to you? Well, maybe I'll just show you the let me see. Okay, I've copied the link here now. It's a little huge because we are using basically a very much of an encrypted path to the file. It could sometimes be encrypted or sometimes just be base64 encrypted. But the point is, we have what we see here as a task download document. So there is actually a controller called download in my component, and I will show you how this download document concept works, but you'll need to write that. You'll need to figure that one out. That's sort of up onto you. That's if you want people to download your documents. If it's just to upload images, of course you don't need any of this, but it's only when you're going to actually have a downloadable file or media. So the next one we want to show you here is just to upload some media file. Okay, so here I have a bunch of audio files and I'm going to upload them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just select a whole bunch of them and then upload them all at once, which is really what this uploader can actually do. So let me just see. Oh, there we go. Drop it there, and can't see it yet, but it's actually uploading, and I think I'll need to refresh the page. So let's give it a name. Let's say the document, and let's say more soon, and then save this. And then see, okay, it didn't actually upload all of them. Interesting. Let me try again. Okay, now I've got 6 of it uploaded, so you can see there are 6 documents, and you can actually download them and test them, see if they are still fine. Why the home, the order of the home. Yes, we see that the documents work. Now let's the media is working. Now let's also do that with documents. Let's add some more documents here. So I've got a few selected. You're going to drag and drop them there. 1, 2, 3, and it's uploaded. I need to maybe check some of the JavaScript. I see it didn't add the download button here. But without saving, if we just refresh the page, you'll see that it actually has all those documents there because it really used Ajax to store them in the database. And so at the end of the day, that is the behavior we wanted here in our component. We wanted the option to upload multiple documents to one document and multiple media files, and to be able to test them in the back end if we wanted to test any of them, and even be able to remove any of them at any time. So you could just click on remove and it will be removed. And in the front we'll be able to use the file names, and the user will be able to identify, oh okay, so this is the one I want. And so the file names actually get preserved while it is actually being stored in the server with this hash behind it. And so we are seeing the JavaScript we looked at earlier in action. It is uploading, it is deleting, this one is actually cropping, which we'll look at it a little more. So that is seeing our drag and drop options in action. Now let's go look at the server side of this implementation. So server side, we have in the document admin view, we are opening the PHP tab. We've got this Ajax area, right? And like I showed before, you'd obviously need to set up the Ajax. What this area targets the controller. So in the controller, it creates all these necessary script to make this method, which is again we're going to look at inside of that custom code. Make this method available to the Ajax call. There are some values that we set because every component I use this stuff in is different, and so for some we're using images, documents and media as the types, and for some the targets are main and doc, and the allowed view, there's only one view in this component that is allowed to use the uploader, and that is the document view. And so the get view ID is the function with which I get the actual view name and ID, and it is basically using the session to sort of throw that around to ensure that nobody's able to tamper with that value through the front in any way. So a little extra little gymnastics to just add another layer there. Okay, so we're going to look now at this PHP Ajax uploader in the custom codes area. So let's just go here and then search for it. So here in the custom codes area, and why I'm using custom code, because I'm reusing this. At the moment it doesn't look like I'm reusing it many places, it only says it's used in component, but this is not the area where I'm actually doing my work. This is just for tutorials. I'm using a whole different developing environment, rather developing system, Joomla website, than this one. So this one is just for this explaining and this demonstrating. Okay, so I'm reusing this code in many components, and here we have formats, image formats that are allowed and in the system, document formats that are allowed in the system, media formats that is allowed in the system, and this you can adapt to whatever you need. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide what you want to allow and what you wouldn't. The reality is this is the available formats, but as you remember here, where was it again? In the options area of our component, it has a media area, and there we have allowed documents, allowed media formats and allowed image formats, and these should be the same, right? It should be the same list having the same values, but these are what is a custom, is a field we created in Joomla, a list field, and so we manually added this to the components configuration area. So if you don't know what that is, let me quickly show you. So in the component, here is our component. It has this, where is it? Let me check. There it is, component config. Now if your component doesn't show one, like this hello world doesn't show a component config, you can go into the component, and then here in, let's see, I think settings, yes, let's see, there is this button here, create component config for this Joomla component, and it's in this. I'm going to close out here. I don't want to do that. I want to just show you with the document manager. Basically we could use the same button. So in settings, there it is. We can actually edit, or now if it doesn't have one, you can create, and here you select fields with their custom values and the tabs in which they should display. And it's basically, as you can see here, I've selected allowed document formats list, which is just a list of the formats, and I obviously set it to allow multiple selection. So that's how I'm doing this: allowed media, allowed image, and allowed documents. And then here's the crop document image. And so if you do not know how to create a field and how to set radio buttons or lists, then go review the videos about that. I'm going to explain that now, but that's really how we deal with that. And that list that we looked at now is the same list as what you see here. It should be the same, because this is the allowed, and that list shows the user what is allowed for this system. So how can I, sorry, notice. Sorry about that. Notice came up and messed up everything. But I'll hate to start over now. Anyway, so this is what you could say as available formats, and then those drop downs is what you, as the owner of this website where this application will run, is what you will allow. Okay, and that this list should be the same as the one there, but it also is sort of going to be used so that if people post a specific type, as if it is allowed, we're going to be able to sort of bounce this and make sure that security wise we are safe. So here's the upload file function, and the upload file starts by first getting the view ID, checking it, and then making sure that there is a view set, of course, and that view is actually part of the allowed views array. So the allowed views array, if you remember, in our, where did I show you that? Okay, it's in the admin view, document admin view. Maybe this one? No, here it is. The allowed views is documents. So that's why I'm saying I'm setting that outside of the custom code, because it depends on which component we are working in, right? So if it is an allowed view, we then get the target and the type, and we set it to global target and global target type. Then we check that this type, what is the format that we are talking about. So if we think about the format, there is, again, if we go back to this one, where is it? Here, let's move it closer so we close to each other. That is the formats that we allow, the types, because we want to sort of validate that the person and who's uploading is uploading the things we anticipate. So it is setting the format with the type. So if it's image, it will be image. If it's images, it will be image. If it's document, it will be document. If it's documents, it will be document. And media will be media. So that's the types. And we're setting that as the format type. Now, then we're using a function get package from upload. Now if you watch the previous tutorial of using the file type uploader, then it's more or less the same kind of function. So if I scroll down, we'll get to it. Where is it? Get package from upload. So only difference is we're doing the application app get and the input in the function, and we are targeting files because we are passing those values in the files place. Then we are seeing what is the file. We are checking whether these things are allowed, warning, import a file error, this kind of now you'll see I'm not throwing it to Joomla, I'm adding it to the error messages, error message, because we're gonna have to give it back to the view. We're not able to. This is Ajax call. Nobody will see it if we just use the raise warning or something. So we are actually grabbing the value and saying we're done here, get out of here. If we're still going, and so you see you could go through this, and very much the same implementation than the one we've demonstrated. The only difference though is our check method is actually a little bit more taking that view and again validating it. So we're doing a second layer of validation here, and then checking whether this specific user that is now logged in has the right to actually edit this item. So it's doing some user validation, and if not, it removes the archive, and it really, we still again have that remove method with a little bit of the code that you saw me take out is still left in it here. In the previous tutorial I used some of these codes, and yeah, so that's really all the same. I'm not going to go into depth. If you don't understand what I've just looked at here, then please go back to the previous tutorial, watch that. It gives you enough information so that we actually up here in our file upload file here, we at this point have the package, and we pass the package to upload now. Now move the file into place. So remember we had to do that in the previous. Here I'm using a function upload now, and in the upload now function we are returning, and if any error now still remains, it's going to be dealt here. Whereas errors that might have occurred here, if this was false, we would use that. See, that's the error message, put it in error and pass it out. And if we were having any other issues, we would there's been an error and we'll pass it out. So this error handling there already. Now in upload now package, we are checking whether the package is actually there, the package name, and we're starting to, from that we are building the name. Now remember I showed you or explained to you that we are using this, we're preserving the file name, but we are sort of hiding the file name. So we're using the target type, the file format, and then this random key generator. Now I'm not exactly sure, I think all JCB helper classes comes out with this random key. So you could just use it in your component, and you can decide how long this string should be. And then I'm using a little placeholder, which is a little generic placeholder, VDM, and then I'm adding the actual name of the file after this placeholder, so that everything before this placeholder is really internal. My system uses this, but the client uses everything this side. And so then if it's a document, we are going to need the folder path for hidden file path. So again, get folder path is a function which I wrote, and I'm not going to share that with you, but you can build your own helper class function to get the path to where you want to put the file. This is up to you. I'm using a hidden file path, but there's a lot of discussion behind that. If I don't pass any values, like in this case, it will most probably return a public path, and which would be where the images go. So every documents go in a hidden area, the images go public, and usually because the image you want it to load somewhere, so you don't want it to be behind the root folder of your website. Okay, now we end up here with the full path, which is the file path. Oh, sorry, this one here, the file name and the file format. So that becomes the file name, and this becomes the file format. Now, I think you will notice that at this stage, the package name is really what is used to build this name here, and we're stripping the file format from that package name, making sure that it doesn't have a file format in it, really to ensure that this file is stored in exactly the format we detect it as, and not as what they say it is. Now we move the package. This is where it gets interesting, to its final destination. If something fails at this point, that it doesn't move, we actually remove the package and we say there was an error. So we just like, we're done. We're not going to worry about it. If it succeeds, then obviously if it's an image, at this stage, if it's an image, we definitely want to resize it. So I've got a resize image helper class. This is also something that you would need to write yourself, which helps me to resize my image. So I'm passing it some values to actually target the image and resize it, and it really doesn't change anything with the image location or anything like that. So I don't need any value back. I just need it to resize it and get it done, and I don't need to know anything else. Then I'm doing some encryption here to see whether the basic encryption is available in this program, and then to actually use that encryption when I start storing the documents into the database. So here's the local file, and we are checking if it's a document or a media. We are going to encrypt it, and then again here we make sure that this ID value is greater than 0, because if it's still an unsaved item, we don't have any place in the database to add this, so we could just skip this basically. So if we realize, okay, this file or this upload doesn't have an ID, then we skip this function here, and we rather do, if it's an image, if it's a document, or if it's if it's a media, then we load the file name like that, and we are going to pass it back to the view, basically taking the results. You see here, formats, it's got a lock value, a token, link, so it has different behavior for different things, and it all builds this result array, and this is what we give them back. We give them back the result array, and it gets started over here. So the file format is added, success gets the file name, which is this value here, and then we start building some other things which are necessary, like the token link for the link, because we want to have the downloadable if it's media, document, or if it's media. If it's an image, no, we don't need any of this. We can just skip that, and then the key name, and there we go, we're done. Whereas if it is actually a saved item, we are going to update the database right now with this new target type and target. So this is where the hidden field name, remember I said to you there's some convention in the hidden field name? Well, this is where that convention comes into play. The hidden field name is built up from target and target type, and if these two are not correct, we are going to not save this value at all. And so we are building an object which then we take, and since we have validated this is definitely the allowed view, and this object and this ID, and then we update the database, and yes, we're done. We've got the file name, and we are basically going to pass the file name here the same way and return to the browser. So that's the server side of this implementation. There are some things which I haven't explained, like this encryption, resizing of the image. I didn't give much explanation. Get the folder path, you need to write all that up. But you could make this work without knowing those things. You could put a hard-coded path here as the file path, and you could, not do any cropping and let the user make sure about the cropping. That is really how I upload many of my documents and things. Obviously this is constantly improving, and because I'm using this snippet across multiple places, it's very easy for me to come in here and say, oh, this is not ideal, and fix it, and then it fixes it everywhere for every place it's being used. And so there is sometimes the need of decoupling some of these functions but I'm trying to try as much as I can to not do that. So set file name array, that's another function that you saw here in the upload. Where is it? Set file name array. This set file name array is really key when you realize that the actual file already exists, so the ID is there, because that means that there are other files possibly still already in the database. So with the add and basic view, we actually trigger the set file name array function to check the database for that specific target field, get the values, decrypt them, and load the new values to that, and then basically pass it back to us. Whereas if the item doesn't exist, that means it doesn't have an ID. I don't know if you remember when we did some demonstration, I was actually adding multiple media files, but only one ended up being remembered. And that's sort of the downside of the current implementation, is that if the ID doesn't exist, we're not able to actually keep track of that. So it's only when the ID exists that we are able to actually do multiple uploads at once. So I should actually give a little bit heads up about that once you've saved the item, you're actually ready to expand upon it and to allow multiple uploads at once. So this set file name array is really dealing with multiple, when we're having multiple. So you'll see there is image, and document is when the file, I'm using the plural to tell me that it should allow multiple. So if it's singular, image and document, then I don't allow multiple, and I'm just going to remove the old one and add the new. Done. And when it is plural, we are using the set file name array, and we're basically building it to actually be multiple. And then one thing I didn't emphasize here is that we actually remove the files as well. There is a remove file, right? There's a remove file, and it also at some point does a validation to check whether the user has the permission to remove files, and it then will basically remove the file. So that is also, and it also uses this file name, but then it passes the remove variable to it, which then means the action is not to add but to take away. And you'll see that there, the action here, there's the add and there's the take away option. So it behaves a little different. So we still basically get back the array, we still build an object, and we still update the database, as well as actually removing the file here. Okay, so all of this code I will dump on GitHub in a Git for you to reuse as you see fit. You'll obviously have to adapt it and keep it under an open source license. That's the only requirement. Okay, well, that if all those things line up and are in place, going back to our admin view, basically that needs to be there. These things need to be here, so you could pause the film and the video and just make sure that you have the same kind of Ajax query calls options. And then here I am actually doing some opening of the files, and you'll see that I'm building what I've called links. So this is going a little beyond, just showing a little bit of my implementation. And these links eventually end up on the page. So if we go back to our JavaScript here and we scroll down, we see this Gatesfile.js. Now let's again look at that Gatesfile.js, because you'll see that those links actually come into play there, if I remember correctly. Let's see here. I see now it's not in that JavaScript, it's actually down here. You'll see that here I've got a load the links to the page document links, and I'm actually adding it to a variable called document links, you see. So in the custom script, where is it? No, it's not this one. It's this one. You'll see if I now search, so I'll take this copy and here I'll search, you'll see that I'm actually using that array and saying, is this property there, and then creating a link. And so that is how we deal with some of that, and it works very well to sort of pass values from JavaScript to PHP and have it available there. Okay, well, I know this was a lot of things to sort of take in, and I would expect you to realize that the previous implementation is so much easier, but like you've seen, when someone actually does create a document and they are able to so easily just drag and drop stuff, and it just crops, and it just gives your component so much an easier feel to it. Instead of the old, you could still do the old select, but the drag and drop is becoming quite popular, and this implementation is really very, it's very nice to have. And I'm sure from what I've shown you, you should be able to get this going in your component. I'm not really going to give support onto this, meaning that if you get stuck, you're on your own, because if it is really the truth that you'll need to know your JavaScript, you'll need to know your PHP, and you will need to know how to debug and how to line up these concepts that they all work in synergy together. It's not going to be so easy for me to do that, especially since I usually do not see the code. But if there is in any of the code that I've shared on Git, which I will also put in the description below this video, if any of that code has issues in it or errors in it that are like, okay, very big problem or something, then please do feel free to give me a heads up over there, and we'll collaborate and improve it as necessary. At the end of the day, this feature is really way beyond what you really need. There is a media manager in Joomla, which is actually ideal. The advantage about this way is that your user is never going to interfere with other users' documents or images or stuff. So if you use this concept, they're not ever going to actually look on your server, add a list and select stuff. This is why I think people would like this, because they can upload stuff and it doesn't affect other people. It doesn't make you more vulnerable as the owner of the system who uses the application. So it is, I think, a better approach. But like I said, there is a media manager. So if you go to content, there is a media manager. And there is a media file type, which works very well and can also add these kind of functionality to your component if this is a little bit too big of a challenge for you. Anyway, thanks for watching. I know this might again be such a long tutorial, but I'm trying my very best to sort of get you on your feet, and you're good to go. Okay.